I'm just trying to share my screen. Okay, here we go. Um, Fortune, can you confirm that you can see my screen, please?
Yes, please, I can see your screen.
Great. Okay, so first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm really pleased to see how many people have joined this webinar, and I'm really heartened to know that you all think that summarizing systematic reviews into plain language summaries is a really important job that we will have to do. I have put this presentation together with my co-hosts, Anna Pizarro and Firas Khalid, and we are really pleased to be talking to you. We'll go through why translation is important and how evidence aid translates translates systematic reviews into the plain language summaries. At the end, I'm going to show our social media channels and also a link to let you know how to join up to our newsletter. So without further ado, I'm going to go to our next slide, which Firas is going to present, and he's going to present around the next 12 slides. Thank you. Over to you, Firas.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to meet all of you. And I echo Claire's point of view that to see this much interest in our work is always heartening. My name is Firas Khalid. I'm a knowledge translation expert. I've been doing this work for the past 10 years, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. Today, we're going to talk to you about why it's important to summarize systematic reviews. I want you to use your reactions to tell me how many of you know what a systematic review is. Awesome. Thanks, Fortune. Anybody else? So in the evidence world, we see systematic reviews as the highest level of research evidence. And the reason why we tend to use them to summarize to inform real-time decision-making is because systematic reviews, when they are synthesized, they go through a very rigorous scientific process. And so in the science world, we consider systematic reviews to be the most rigorous type of evidence synthesis. You're probably wondering why that is important. Well, if you think about humanitarian aid or health and humanitarian emergencies, we know that lives are at stake, that resources are being accounted for, and that decision makers really need to make decisions that maximize the potential impact, increase efficiency and effectiveness of interventions. And they can only do that if they're able to use the best available and up-to-date research evidence to inform those decision making. Next slide, please. So how do we know that the summaries are useful? We've conducted many studies over the past few years looking at what the summaries are intending to do. Our purpose all along has been very clear. Our goal at Evidence Aid is to make sure that we're able to inform real-time decision-making to strengthen health systems in the middle of health and humanitarian emergencies. And the way that we know this is that we actually track the number of summaries that are being used. We look at our analytics. We see carefully which region is using which summaries, and we try to actually reach out to our stakeholders, our people that are using our evidence summaries, to ask them, how are you viewing our evidence summaries? One way we just did that recently is that we actually conducted a mixed method research study over a 2-year period where we interviewed 26 decision makers around the world. So think of heads of decision makers, think about leaders of organizations, and we asked them specific questions around what are some of the challenges you're facing in finding and using research evidence, and specifically summaries, evidence summaries. And we also asked them, is our format of the way we're producing evidence summaries conducive for you to conduct real-time evidence-informed decision-making? Our study was actually tremendously impactful in the sense that we were able to generate a wealth of knowledge around the format and the template of how evidence summaries can be used to inform real-time decision-making. We also used the study purposefully to actually question, ask, and probe deeper into the format of how they want decision-making, how they want evidence summaries to be presented on the website. And we use that feedback to improve our platform to make sure that it's actually user-friendly for our users. Next question. Next slide, sorry. So how do we summarize systematic reviews? Like I alluded to earlier, we use a very specific evidence summary template. We produce that template by actually speaking to decision makers who work in the field, who deal with health and humanitarian crisis. And we ask them, how do you like how do you like us to present the summary of systematic review? Based on that feedback, we developed a writing guide. We have a very strict guidance that we follow and how we synthesize evidence summaries, how we generate the question, how we clarify the question that's being asked, because we have to make sure that the evidence summary we're producing is really aligned with what the question is being asked. We don't stop there. Once the summary is produced, we actually ask for feedback. We are a continuous cycle of asking for feedback throughout our process, from the initial stages all the way to when the evidence summary is produced on our website. We ask that feedback on purpose because we really want to make sure that the evidence summary is answering the question that's being asked, but secondly, and more importantly, is that we're able to also generate generalizable knowledge. And what do we mean by that is that we want to make sure that our evidence summary can be used by any decision maker working in similar crisis or setting. And so we really have to make sure that they're able to use the evidence summaries to inform all kinds of interventions that are relevant to health and humanitarian crisis. We believe that this is really important because this feedback loop not only enhances the quality of our evidence summaries, but also it ensures that our decision makers are getting the answers they need in real time. Next slide. So what's next for us? We're really going to try to identify the systematic reviews. We go through a very strict, or I would like to say rigorous process of priority setting on which systematic reviews are possibly relevant to the questions that were being asked. We divide our collections into specific themes, and we work with our stakeholders, whether it's the WHO or PAHO, on what are specific themes that are relevant to people who are working in this sector. We then allocate a specific number of systematic reviews for summary writing. We allocate a writer. We always have a 3-person checker. What I mean by that is that it's almost like a conveyor belt. We really try to develop a lean methodology the way we write our evidence summaries. So we have somebody who writes the summary, somebody who checks it, and we also have a finalizer. All three of them work continuously with each other to make sure that we're feeding into each other into the draft summary. We also send it for consistency to check with the consistency of the template and the accuracy of content. Finally, we assign a specific category to it, and we sign off on it when it's ready to be available to all sites. And we also make sure that they're translated into languages that are conducive for decision-making. Next slide. So in the next few slides, I think we're going to demonstrate the translation of systematic reviews into language summaries through using the example of the resilient health systems as our example. The hyperlink you see on this website takes you straight to our evidence summary that we focus and built with PAHO on resilient health systems. Next. At Evidence Aid, like I alluded to earlier, we're really trying to make sure that we provide improved access to reliable, curated information. We do this by setting priorities on what needs to be researched and what needs to be summarized. We also we're actively working with librarians to look for very high quality research that's relevant to health emergencies. And we commission and conduct and synthesize systematic reviews of such research evidence to provide a very reliable and robust evidence base in this sector. We have become pioneers in evidence aid for this kind of work. People across the world that you need research evidence to inform decision-making go to evidence aid for this type of rigorousness. We employ scientific leaders, myself and Anna and others included, who really, our bread and butter is to examine the rigorousness of the scientific evidence, to provide some form of assessment of the research evidence, and to summarize this evidence based on the available levels of health and emergency response and preparedness. Next slide. So our collections are really diverse. Here's just an example of our 7 interconnected collection. The reason why we call it interconnected, that we believe in order to build a resilient and strong health system that's able to withstand any crisis, there have to be interconnected. I'm going to pause here because I have the chat open. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me because there's just a comment right now in the chat that they can't hear anything. I just want to make sure it's not from my end. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yes, we can hear you.
That's great. Thank you. So the 7 interconnected collections really build on resilient health systems. I'm going to pause here and just allude to something very important. The world is going through a shift with COVID-19 pandemic and just the increase in number of crises. We know from the research evidence that the number of health and humanitarian crises are only going to be on the rise. And that health systems now more than ever really need to be resilient and strong in the face of those crises. So how do you do that? You actually look at areas of vulnerability that weaken health systems. Those include things like COVID-19 pandemic or other infectious disease outbreaks, the refugee and migrant crisis that's facing the world that will be continuously on the increase. Ebola is a good example of another infectious disease outbreak that really can threaten existing health systems. Malnutrition and famine is another one. Earthquakes and windstorms. So climate change is a big area of focus. The reason why all of those are interconnected to resilient health systems, because when we examine how to build a resilient health system, we must look at the vulnerabilities that weaken our health system. And those areas of focus or those collection areas really help us focus on how to strengthen our health system. All right, next slide, please. Awesome. So we run searches by topic. We look at what it's depending on the topic. We look at the results we get. Sometimes we get over 5,000 results. Then we try to screen them lower. Next. We really look at the collection of publication data, the topic methodology, the findings, the implications to really try to enhance the types of systematic reviews we're included to summarize. Next. In our website, you'll notice that they're categorized summaries that we cross-link them across collection. We also are you're able to download the reference management and embed them into your own reference site. And we draft summaries and we confirm them by PAHO, our stakeholder, our main decision maker on translation to PAHO-friendly summaries, which include English, Portuguese, Spanish, and French. We have translated into other languages, but depending on who we're working with. And then we've actually summarized 200 summaries on our website, which are now freely accessible to anybody who is willing to look at them. Next. This is an example of our resilient health system. Claire, just let me know when you want me to pause and turn it over. So this is a great example of how it looks like on our system. And you'll notice that our site is very conducive it's very user-friendly. You'll see all the languages that are available here. Thanks. And you can also search all our resources on our site. So not specific to just the resilient health system, but you can also access all the different collections we spoke about earlier. I turn it over now to my colleague, Claire. I think is it Anna or Claire right now?
Yeah, it's Anna next for us. Thank you for that.
Awesome. You're welcome. Please feel free to ask any questions. Anna, over to you, my brilliant colleague.
Thank you for us. Happy to be here as well. So now we went to phase 1 and phase 2, that they were great. And now we're going to our next phase.
And you?
Sorry, we're going to our next phase where we're doing expansion and analysis of what we already did. Thank you, Claire. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I'm showing our template for this summary. That this is the one that we have been using for the last 2 years. And as you can see, is very simple and straightforward. We have first our citation that we differ between regular reviews and Cochrane reviews, adding the city number. Also the DOI URL, and if it's free to review, and the funding sources that they might have. Next slide, please. And this is, I don't know if we can zoom a little because I don't see, but this is one of the, can you do that, Claire?
No, I can't zoom in, Anna, any further. I'm really sorry.
It's fine, but this is.
I think people can expand their own space where they see this. So hopefully we can talk through it. That would be great.
So thank you. this is an example of one of our summaries on the website. So you can see what I just showed you because we translate that from Word to our website. So you can see here citation, the language, if it's free to review, the funding sources that we extract. And then next slide, please. So languages, we do have all these available languages for our reviews. So if the abstract and full text are in the same language, we do write abstract and full text available. But sometimes, and especially WHO reviews and some others, they do have the abstract in various language, the abstract in different languages. So we also note that. And now that Cochrane reviews are having audio podcasts, we are inserting the codes from those that are available. And this is how you can see it here, for example, that in language, we do have their abstract and full text. They're both available in English. Next slide, please. So, and we do have now, what is this? That it's like how we kind of summarize the summary. So we do have first like some bullet points of opening sentences and how we kind of write something along the lines. So as you can see here, we have building a resilient health system will improve its ability to continue to function during and after health emergencies and disasters. So we kind of summarize a bit and we kind of introduce this summary, and then we add a sentence relevant to the topic and to the special collection. And then we do have this one right here that we fill with every, depending on every review. So we go in this, and then we add if it's a systematic review, a rapid review, scoping review, or especially if it's a Cochrane Campbell one. And we go the author search for, and then we insert the type of studies in them. The study design and also the focus of the study and the setting. We're going to see it now in the next slide. Also, if they restricted their searches, it's not so easy for me to see it, but it says that, you know, if you can go back, it's better.
Anna, is it helpful for me to say in the what is this section?
Yeah.
This page. So what we've got is being prepared to adequately handle biological hazards is an important aspect of hospital preparedness for emergencies and disasters. And then it says, in this systematic review, the authors searched for studies of hospital preparedness for disasters that had considered at least one type of biological hazard. They restricted their searches to articles published in English and did the search in June 2019. They included 23 studies.
Thank you, Claire. I could zoom a little on my computer so I can see it better now. Thank you. And in what was found, we also summarize in 3 or 4 sentences.
Oh, sorry, Anna.
So that is what works or what was found. So we summarize in 3 or 4 sentences what works for the review, if it's a review of intervention, or what was found if it's a descriptive or narrative review. And we do insert sentences answering the objective of the study, but we also add additional sentences from the results or conclusions of the review that they're important. And we also use what doesn't work, but just if a review is what works, if it is what was found, we just leave it like that. And we use this subheading, including the interventions here, if there's evidence or if there was no effect of evidence of harm that outweighs those benefits. And what's uncertain, we also use for this type of reviews. And we use it for reviews of the effects of interventions. And we describe the intervention of the setting where the effects are certain. And if the evidence in the review is not sufficient to conclude that something is beneficial, we include it here as well, better than in what doesn't work, because we're not certain of that. And then over here, you can see that we only had what was found instead of what works. So we had that hospital preparedness measure for biological hazards include administrative and management, specialized and logistical measures. And we also have different sentences. I do have a comment that someone can see the screen, but I can't see it perfectly. I don't know if anyone has the same problem.
Anna, is there anything you want me to read out or take over from?
No, I'm good. Any implications? So please go to the next slide, please. So any implications right here. So in the template, we can see that the authors, we can check if the authors of the review stated that they have implications or not. And in other considerations, if the authors of the review discuss their findings in the context, and then we use this that is kind of similar to the progress plus. So we have place of residence, race, ethnicity, culture and language, occupation, gender and sex, religion, education, socioeconomic status, social capital, also personal characteristics associated with discrimination. So we also go to the discussion and we see if there was maybe any discussion about these characteristics, and we also state that. Or if the authors didn't, but most of them did, but if the authors didn't, then we say that they didn't discuss their findings in this context. And then as you can see here, in other considerations, they did discuss their findings in the context of occupation. And at the end, we do have who prepared the summary, who checked it, and who finalized it.
So everybody, certainly thank you to Anna and Faraz for a really compelling presentation. I thought it's certainly not a very straightforward process, and it's not an easy process, and it's one that needs to be got right. I think from the evidence aid perspective, we have worked really, really hard over a number of years, probably since early 2020, to get this into its current state. It's certainly evolved many times, and I think that part of it actually is really important, the fact that it has evolved and it has improved, and we have reacted to the feedback from our stakeholders, our clients, and our users. I've written on this slide to join us. I suggest in the first instance you sign up to our newsletter. You can send your details to info@evidenceaid.org, and we will add you to our mailing list. We send out 2 mailings a month, so you won't be overwhelmed. You can also follow us on our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and hopefully we're relatively easy to find on all of those channels. And as a last thing, our website is www.evidenceaid.org, and the 3 of us would just like to say thank you for listening, and that we are open for questions. I don't know whether Fortune wants to, how Fortune wants to do the questions, whether we want them in the chat, or whether you can unmute yourselves and ask questions. I'm not sure. Fortune, maybe you can suggest how people do that, what the best way to do it is.
All right, thank you very much, Claire. Please, if you have a question, just raise your hand, or you can drop it in the chat box and I'll read it for Claire and her team. Thank you. I think we already have George Judge Sengi, but while the questions are going on, I'll be sharing the links to the social media platforms and handles and networks you need. And of course, the post-workshop survey too. Thank you. George, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Please, can you confirm if I'm clearly audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just had a number of questions. We're actually doing a systematic review. It's perfect timing for this. We're doing a systematic review on type 2 diabetes in Tanzania, and I think it's quite so relevant with what is happening with regards to the context of information. We have a lot of information, and we have a number of systematic reviews that have been done. And what we're trying to look at right now is how this can be novel, how this can make relevant sense to the policymakers, but also to the policy implementers, which are CSOs and clinical operators. So the context of my question, number one, I would like to understand why you went ahead with designing a template rather than being an open-ended format of developing the systematic review. That is number one. And number two, are there specific softwares that you use for specific parts of the process, even if it is the database search? Are there specific softwares or programs that you'd use along the process? This is the second question that I have.
I'll take that on. Yeah, I'll take that on.
You want to take on the first, certainly the first part.
Sure. Thanks, George. I mean, I'm really happy to hear that you are working on a systematic review for diabetes. It sounds like your topic is very timely. Just to be clear, our template is not really on systematic reviews. It's on summaries, like an evidence summary that's based on the systematic review. We did that because partly we wanted to make sure that there's a standard way that we approach evidence summary synthesis, so that our stakeholders or our people who are actually benefiting from the evidence summaries are not confused by the various formats. What I urge you to do as somebody who's working on and synthesizing a systematic review is actually to work with evidence aid and people like myself on how to create an evidence summary that's conducive for real-time decision-making. The reason why I say that is because often we're finding now more and more of this collaborative process or partnership of working with people who are synthesizing the evidence and summarizing it at the same time. I actually believe that it's a much more healthy and productive relationship than trying to summarize the systematic review once it's published. By working with you closely throughout your process of thinking about your systematic review, we're able to highlight areas of focus. We're able to really focus and try to strategize where the evidence summary will go. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Ahmad. That was very, very clear. And just before the second question is answered, do you have to actually have a summary? And what is the difference between this and probably a policy brief?
I love this question. George is asking all the right questions today. So policy brief is also what I do for a living. Policy briefs are more extensive. I like to think of it as the stepbrother of an evidence summary. What I mean by that is that it's very similar to an evidence summary, but it goes into a lot more details and really focuses on the policy implications and implementation considerations. While evidence summary really just focuses on the systematic review itself. So two different formats for two different types of audiences. Policy briefs or briefing notes are meant more for policymakers to inform policies, while an evidence summary can be used by anybody, or any decision maker or stakeholders who are looking to really focus on informing their decision making.
Perfect. Thank you, Ahmad.
You're welcome.
Could you share your email, please, if you don't mind?
Sure, we'll do that. No worries.
All right, thank you very much. I think the first and second question has been answered.
I know the second question was regarding programs and whether there are any specific programs that you use along the process. I think this has not been answered.
You know, I wish there was a program that can make our lives easier, that we can just put the systematic reviews and it pops up an evidence summary. But as my colleague Anna would tell you, this is a lot more work than you think it is. And Claire can testify this as somebody who manages the entire collections. There is no software. We actually have to, and on purpose, you know, people ask me now a lot about AI, you know, ChatGPT and others, and how we can use it to summarize summaries. I tell you, we've been testing it at the Canadian Red Cross, ChatGPT and other modeling AI technology. The problem with them is that it's actually producing a lot of false information, and the references are not, we cannot verify the references. So we're very hesitant to use AI or any kind of technology in our work. That doesn't mean that we don't use it. I think they're really useful in helping us think about implementation considerations, some of the contextual factors we need to think about, but we really try to rely on our own scientific rigorous methods, our training, to really evaluate the evidence that's being produced. And this is why the template becomes so important, because it actually makes our job a little bit easier when we follow a standardized template that we know our decision makers value and use.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for the explanation, Ahmad. Okay, I think me has Barbara can go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry for this very enlightening webinar we've had. So you stated that you can work with teams doing systematic reviews to help them come up with evidence summaries. Does this have a cost implication? Oh, so how does that work? If like we reach out to you to help us with an evidence summary for systematic review we're working with, and two, can you do trainings for people who want to do evidence summaries or plain language summaries? Thank you.
For us, Anna, are you happy for me to take this one? Yeah. Okay, so yes, there is a cost involved, and at the moment we are only producing summaries for clients. So at the moment it's only for the Pan American Health Organization, who we have worked with on phase 1 and phase 2 and are about to start phase 3 of the Resilient Health Systems. We work on summaries of other systematic reviews for other humanitarian areas when we have spare resource that is essentially paid for, and we certainly can provide training, but again this would need to be a funded training. Evidence Aid is charity. It runs on pretty much a shoestring budget, which I imagine that most of your organizations do. So I totally appreciate the fact that you're struggling for funds as well, but that's essentially how it works for us. We simply do not have spare capacity to run trainings without being able to recoup the cost of those trainings. Does that answer your question, Mihes?
Thank you very much. It does.
Great. And I'm happy to be in touch separately about that if you want to explore that with us.
Awesome.
Because we would be happy to do webinars like we are today. So it's sort of an opportunity for some kind of training, although it's not exactly a training session.
Thank you very much, because we're part of the Cochrane Kenya team, the East African Hub. So we'll be humbled if you could do a webinar for us on that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I was wondering, Claire, could you drop your email or I don't know, because I'm wondering she might want to send you an email.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm just putting
okay,
it in the
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we had, there was another raised hand. Victoria, Nigeria, from Nigeria, please go ahead. I think you were muted.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to know if there was any opportunity to learn or intern even without being paid. Is there any opportunity like that? Like, I just started a writing academy and it's been amazing, and I would like to get better in my writing. So I wanted to know. I'm a final year pharmacy student at the University of Lagos. So I wanted to know if there was any interning opportunity with evidence aid, right? So,
yeah, there's certainly, we certainly do take on interns. We've got quite a lot at the moment, so we'd probably be looking at maybe a couple of months' time, but that will give you some chance to think about becoming familiar with the evidence aid, of what we do, and how we do things. So please just drop me a line if you're interested.
All right, thank you very much. I think a couple of months will actually be fine because I'm about writing my final exams now. So I think a couple of months from now will just be fine. Thank
Right.
you.
And good luck with the exams.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, F. Young.
All right, thank you very much. Please, do we have any other questions? Oh, okay. So can we hear from Domis Okech? Domis Okech,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, it's Dismas, but thank you very much, Dismas. Okay, and thanks for an
sorry.
excellent presentation. Although it would appear that you're a bit too fast for a lot of people, I think there'll be an opportunity to learn a bit more slowly. Some of us are really slow learners. This was heavy material and it was presented really so fast. So maybe if it can be broken down into 2 presentations and made a little bit more didactic, we may learn better. My question though is where do you draw the line between the kind of summaries we are talking about and umbrella reviews, which I think is looking at systematic reviews, many systematic reviews, and sort of condensing them into one umbrella review, and the summaries that we are talking about. Where do you draw the line?
So we actually have done in the past 2 kinds of summaries when we did our COVID work for another client, and we actually produced over 600 summaries for that collection. And because the COVID research was not coming out quickly, one of the things that we were trying to do was to bring together systematic reviews that were similar. And in doing so, what we created were what we called combined summaries, which took a number of similar topics and summarized them in one summary. They were quite different to the summaries that we have shown you today, because on a general level, we don't normally produce those. So for us, I don't know whether you want to talk about those because you were involved in those combined summaries as well. We don't, by the way, we don't distinguish between umbrella reviews and systematic reviews or scoping reviews for that matter. With those, we all of those together.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more use of the combined reviews. I mean, but the reason for that, we saw it a lot during COVID-19 pandemic, where there was multiple reviews on the same topic, and that really pushed us to think carefully and critically about the use of combined reviews. It's also important when you have multiple topics, multiple reviews on the same topic, but different facets of it. So a combined review really allows us to look at it from multiple levels. And we've actually developed a template specifically for combined summaries.
Yeah, and actually in phase 3 of the work on resilient health systems, we've talked about some of those summaries becoming combined summaries if it's appropriate. We certainly are looking at not as many combined summaries as we have single summaries, and we talked about the ratio being around 3 to 1. So 3 normal summaries versus 1 combined summary in terms of our counts.
All right, thank you very much, Awesome. Can we hear from Dr. Mukesh?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for organizing this wonderful webinar. I have a couple of questions. Number one, when we write the plain language summary, either for our own learning purpose or for our institute's requirement, or for Cochrane has some Cochrane Engage program where participants can involve in various activities. So when we do that, who is the owner of this plain language summary? Can we, for example, if we wrote a summary, can we share that on our own page, like Facebook or LinkedIn, in other platforms? Or should we contact authors for that also? This is my question number one. Number two is there any readability index grade for plain language summary? Like, should it be like 8th grade level or 10th grade level? Is there a standard cutoff point for this?
So I can answer the first question. I don't know, Faraz, if you could take the second question for me, that would be great. The first question in terms of who owns the summary, we've never discussed that as such. However, the summary is published on the Evidence Aid website. And for us, we always acknowledge who drafted it, who checked it, and who finalized it. So you can actually refer to the published summary on the Evidence Aid website, which would have that person's name on it. So in our view, it's not about owning, it's about making it freely available for everybody. So yes, that's sort of I know that's not the exact answer. So we do work a little bit differently to Cochrane in that we do make that very, very clear for people to see.
Yeah, also that on
Anna,
phase three, we're working on adding DOI for each summary so it can be easier to cite and to have it.
Yeah, we've yet to establish quite how we're going to do that though. So yeah. What was, sorry, your second question I was going to get for us to answer. Can you remind us what the second question was?
Yeah, so that is a readability index. Well, there is a example in Microsoft Word itself. There is something called readability index where we can measure our difficulty in reading, the level of difficulty in reading for our article. So there are some paid websites which, example, Grammarly doesn't have, but there is a pro rating aid which is similar to Grammarly. In addition to correcting grammar, it also gives us readability index, where we can adjust our text. It gives some prompts. Example, if we keep grade 5 level English, it gives some prompt to reduce some which sentence are a little bit difficult to read. It highlights that. So for plain language summary, do we have any such criteria? It should be like 8th grade level English, or it should be like 10th grade level English. Generally for plain language summary, is there any such criteria?
Very good question. Our founder, Mike, Dr. Mike, is very keen on making sure that our summaries are as plain as possible. So we actually spend a lot of times, and Anna and I could testify to this, of going over the words and really trying to make them as lay as possible. So we stay away from technical terms. We really try to stay away from acronyms. And if we use an acronym, we try to spell them out. We also, for the PAHO collection, we really spend a lot of time thinking about accessibility and color coding and accommodation. And so we take those factors into account every chance that we can. And this is, I think, where technology can really serve us. Softwares can really help us make sure that the language we use is appropriate for the audience that we're trying to aim. But we always try to make it as lay as possible, for sure. That's a great question. Thank you.
And just to add, we don't use auto-translate services. We actually pay people to translate our summaries so that we can ensure that there is a checking process that goes on. However, in phase 3, we are going to be exploring the auto-translation route because obviously then you can hit many more languages. So for PAHO, it was aimed at people from South America, Latin America, and so we only translated into French, Spanish, and Portuguese. But for many of our other collections, we've translated into, so for instance, for COVID, we translated into 9 languages, which included things like Arabic, and for earthquakes, Japanese. But again, as I said, that requires a level of payment, which means that we need to ensure that that is costed into any contract that we have with any client, which is why we're also going to explore the auto-translate content.
Thank you.
Right,
Regarding
thank you.
just a small clarification regarding my first question. I understand that the plain language summary, all these efforts are to disseminate the information. But my worry is, should we ask permission before sharing that? So that is my worry. It's not about owning that as an authorship or something, but while sharing, we should not face any problems because of not informing anyone. That is what my main concern.
Anna, do you want to comment on that? I think the answer is no, but I want to make sure that Anna and Faraz have an opinion. to share? Anna?
Yeah, I follow you, Claire. I think, yeah, the answer is
It's not problematic to share. And also,
Yeah.
if it's an evidence aid summary, certainly you could, every summary has its own URL. So
Yeah.
you can simply share the URL
Okay.
rather than the actual text.
Text.
Strauss,
Yeah.
anything from you on that particular question? No. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Claire.
All right, I think we can just take one more question. I don't know if there is any other person. All right, I wonder if there is any other question. Okay, awesome. So thank you very much, everybody. I think it's a very insightful webinar, and just a sec. Okay. So it's a very insightful webinar, and I think we've learned a lot. Big thanks to Claire, a big thanks to Dr. Firas and Anna Beatrice. Thank you very much. And thanks to my colleague, Rosalind Dine. Thank you to all our participants. Yes, we will share the video recording with you. And for the slides will be available on the Evidence Aid website. So just keep in touch. I believe in a few days' time, it will be made available. But I think by tomorrow, today, the video recording should be sent, and it will be sent through our email. So I'm wondering if you had filled the post-webinar survey, because we'll be sharing it through those emails. And to anybody that is connected to us, maybe to our newsletter or on our social media platforms. So please don't forget to follow Evidence Aid and SCSRM. Follow us across all our social media platforms. I believe Evidence Aid has a couple of webinars coming up in the coming month, and we do have webinars too. So I think they are very exciting webinars, and it might be something that would be of interest to you. All right, Rosalind, do you have anything to say, please?
No, please, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending, and also thanking the moderator and the speakers. We are very happy to have you, and looking forward to having a workshop on how to conduct plain language summaries in subsequent events. Thank you very much.
Yes, I agree. All right, thank you. I was wondering if you could just put on your camera. Let's just do an online
a photo, a group photo?
Yes, please. Yes, yes, online group photo. Thank you. I'll start in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sorry, I can't open my camera. I'm not in a very good environment. All right, so we take the first one. And the next, just about 5 pages here. And the next, thank you for joining. Please follow us on Next on all our social media platforms, and keep in touch and fill the post-workshop survey and the next. All right, thank you very much for joining, and join us next month. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Good morning, and take care of yourself.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.